So when are you getting here in Harrisonburg?
Good question. Let's see. We fly in. I guess we're pretty much just there on Friday. Yeah.
All right. So how did you first become involved in the music industry?
I mean, I guess like a lot of musicians, I just started writing songs. I fell in love with music itself. If you take it way back, I guess I was 12 when I got into public school choir. So that was my entree into music, and I think there I like to call it the pre-glee years before choir was cool,
Yeah.
and choir was definitely not cool when I was in school. Um, but we actually had a really cool choir program, and I went to McCallum High School, which is actually now a fine arts academy.
Mm,
And although it wasn't at the time when I went there, it always had such a history of being a fine arts school. And as a public institution, I
yeah,
think it's just points to the importance of arts programs in our public schools.
certainly. So you've been around for a while now as a musician, as an artist, and I believe you're an independent artist, correct?
Indeed.
Yeah. So in a day and age where a lot of people have the ability to become independent artists through things like Spotify and SoundCloud, how do you manage to get more listeners? And is it more about making the music, or is it about getting people to listen to
The age-old question, right?
it? Mhm.
I mean, I think just like for everybody, it's constantly changing, So, I think there are some things that are still true in the music industry in terms of um, you do have to tour a fair amount to actually build an audience, but even that, I mean, now with online audiences, I mean, obviously there are people who, you know, build a huge following on YouTube, TikTok, whatever it is, and then that would enable you to tour. So, I think for me, I definitely come from, kind of a pre-social media era in the sense that, I just sat down with a guitar when I was probably your age, and I was in college and, just sat
Yeah.
down and wrote music about, the things I was struggling with or excited
Mhm.
about and started playing out in coffee shops and doing all that. And
Yeah.
to date, I've had a chance to tour all over the world, tour the States.
Mhm.
And I think for me, social media is so powerful in the sense that you can connect with new audiences.
Yeah.
It it's hard though to balance. So I think to your question, it's like as an independent artist, you got to learn how to balance the creative with the
Yeah.
business.
Yeah. And you certainly have a lot of experience with that being on NPR. And also, you were an ambassador for the US at one point, or still are. What do those experiences mean to you, and how can you put that into your everyday life and your music?
I think for me, music is all about connection, and so I think all of those experiences have been about connection. I mean, from NPR Tiny Desk, it amazes me still, like the kinds of people that will comment and the things that they will say, and a lot of I try my best to respond to people and just kind of see where they're coming from. So that's a way to connect. And then at the same time, being able to go abroad to places like Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Venezuela, Guatemala, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, and go across the world and experience a new culture and hear their music and share ours. I mean, that's the ultimate connection, right? And then to be able to do that for an audience, I mean, I have tons of stories, but I think one of the ones that really sticks with me is Uzbekistan. We learned how to sing a song in Uzbek. It's called Nazar Nazar, and people were losing their minds that we were, that like this American band was singing this song in Uzbek. And there's a thing that women do in the audience when like they're excited and when they so and over there it's a sign of fortune if you have like gold and silver teeth, like for women.
Mhm.
And so they've got like grills, you know what I mean? Which like it would be weird for us, but like imagine if all of our moms and grandmas had like grills, right? Like that's kind of what it's like. And so we start singing Nazar Nazar, and they just like get up and they do this thing with their arms, and they're just like shaking, and like grinning with their grills. And I'm just like, this is the coolest thing
Yeah.
ever.
Going back to that type of experience, how do you interact with crowds? How do you get people to really start enjoying your music in live, in person, especially now with COVID, how it's more difficult? Those experiences you had before that, how do you interact with people and get them to move for your music?
Well, I mean, this is one reason I play Latin music. So I think ironically, there is like kind of a science to why Latin music makes you want to move,
Hmm.
and it's all about tension.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of the music that we hear here in the States is kind of you're expecting it. So it's like what you would call like four on the floor, like do, do, do,
Hmm.
do. It's really like you just kind of be like, yeah,
Bop your head to it and everything
Right,
with the
right.
rhythm.
Which makes you move too. But when you
Hmm.
hear something like a clave, which goes doom, 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 doom,
Hmm.
doom, 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 there's like called a three side and a two side. So it's like one, two, three,
Yeah.
one, two. And you can flip it, and there's all these different ways to do a clave. But the space in between those two is the tension. And that's actually
Hmm.
why you want to move. So whole point is we make hopefully we get you to move by literally just playing Latin rhythms. And that's one of the
Hmm.
reasons that I love Latin music, is because it just suddenly you're just like, I don't even know what's happening, but I just can't help myself.
Yeah.
And then I'm a songwriter, and so obviously I hope to, move hearts as well.
Hmm. So recently, I've actually been getting into more Latin music and culture and trying to listen to artists from outside of the United States. For example, yourself, Jesse Reyes, Cuco, to name a few.
Yeah.
Something I find in common with that is storytelling. And some of the songs I listen to by you, like Que Manda, and excuse me if I'm saying this wrong, Miles de Mulis or
Yeah.
Mias, and then or It's Hard to Love a Woman. I think it's all a heavy storytelling involved with it. And speaking of like the rhythms you and the patterns you talk about in Latin music, you seem to mesh that really well. So is that the number one thing you want to do is tell a story or just make music for music's sake?
It's a good question. I mean, I just kind of make the music I want to make. I do
Mm-hmm.
think I'm not, because I'm, for the most part, a self-taught musician. I was in choirs, but as far as being a guitar player and I guess kind of knowing the language of music, for me, that all comes here. Like, I don't have a ton of head knowledge about music.
Yeah.
And so as a result, I make the music that lo que me llama, like it's in Spanish, you would say like what calls to you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and sometimes that means, making a song like Miles de Millas, which is a bilingual cumbia. So it's in English and Spanish. I
Yeah.
was writing that song. I initially wrote it not in a Latin rhythm,
Mm-hmm.
and I wanted it to be something else. And I knew this, I for some reason just knew that the chorus wanted to be in Spanish. It was almost like
Yeah.
I was trying to write something in English, and I was like, no, it wants to be in
Mm-hmm.
Spanish. And a lot
I'm
of the
calling
songs
to
that
you.
I have, yeah, and a lot of the songs that I have that do fuse different languages together or are all in Spanish is because, like, the song literally kind of told me, yeah, I'm in Spanish, Um, and so I don't know. I think I don't know that I have a good answer to your question, but I make music that I like.
Mhm.
It's mostly, I think, that creative process of I might start with something in mind, but then it turns into something completely different. And then I love being able to share that from stage, because when you give a creation to the world, it also can take on a new life.
Mhm.
Like it's no longer just my song. When you listen to it, if you connect to a song, then it's yours. You're like, this is my jam. Like this is my song. This is what it means to me, right?
Mhm.
And so that's one of the beautiful things about creation and sharing that with the world, is that, it invites other people in.
Yeah. So would you say that basically getting people to understand you as an artist kind of helps them find themselves with their music, or
Yeah, I mean, I think just in general, when we are our best selves, I think that inspires other people to be their best self. And when we use our voices, it inspires other people to use their voice.
Mhm.
Especially, I mean, ideally, if that's coming from a genuine place, not like
Yeah.
a place of, I just want to take up space because I want to take up space, right?
Mhm.
Um, but these are why I think for me, like the story of La Que Manda is a story of a woman coming into her power. And it very
Yeah.
much tells a story of kind of where I've been and understanding that I've made myself really small for most of my life and
Mhm.
understanding that that is a very universal understanding of girls and women around the world.
Yeah.
Um, and so La Que Manda is kind of meant to be this, just like you would put on your playlist to go out to the gym and work out, and you're like,
Mhm.
all right, I got to pump myself up. That's kind of how I feel, how I view, especially that song La Que Manda, because you put
Yeah.
that thing on and it's like, okay, it's like, drinking like 3 espressos at
Yeah.
once, and you're just like, I'm doing it. And that's kind of what I wanted. I wanted this like punch in the face just to say, like,
Mhm.
I am a woman and that's amazing. And
Yeah.
watch me. And then to get on stage and be able to do that, and people are just like, I don't even know what this song is about, but it's my jam. Like,
Yeah.
I'm here for it. Yeah.
No, yes, definitely, because I feel like a lot of times music can represent cultures and people. Like, for example, I have a sister and an amazing mother, and I love them both, like the perfect way they are. And just having the ability to express yourself in a way that's not just appropriate, in the way that people can understand each other and really kind of grasp that feeling. A lot of people aren't able to do that. And I feel like music does that really well. So as a member of the LGBTQ plus community, how has music affected you, and how has being a part of that community affected your career?
That's a good question. I think I've largely been very privileged.
Mm-hmm.
I'm half Mexican, half Swiss German. I was very much, but I let's face it, like I'm white passing.
Yeah.
I think in a very similar way, I'm straight passing. And so as a result, I have been very privileged. I haven't experienced a lot of outward um, negativity. Uh, and and at the same time, like there's definitely, I don't know, I think there's a lack of pathways, and that's probably the way that it's been affected, that it's affected me the most. And I guess
Mm-hmm.
what I mean by that is sometimes people fit into a pathway that's kind of like already built. So for
Yeah.
instance, if I were a male that played country music in Texas, people would be
Mm-hmm.
like, "Oh, cool, yeah, I get that."
Yeah.
Right? But because I'm, a female, queer, Latina who doesn't quite look Latina, that plays
Mm-hmm.
bilingual music from Texas that's not Tejano, like people are like, I don't, what does that mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's like, I mean, people don't, they have a hard time even understanding when they're like, what is Latin pop? What is that?
Mm-hmm.
You know? Um, and so that's hard. It's hard being an independent artist that doesn't like kind of fit a mold. And
Yeah.
so I think as far as being queer, I mean, I grew up Catholic, and that
Mm-hmm.
just my own personal journey, I would say has it's definitely affected me, probably more so than like in the music industry
Yeah.
itself. I think it's my own personal journey with coming out, falling in love with my wife, who I
Mm-hmm.
met at the Catholic Church, our whole story,
Yeah.
and this is kind of why I share it from stage, because I love our story. It was really hard, but really wonderful.
Yes.
And, we've been together for 16 years. And I love sharing those things through song and through story on stage
Mhm.
in hopes that other people understand the beauty of their own stories.
Yeah. So how would you go ahead and talk to people about becoming more comfortable with themselves, seeing that you've obviously had a lot of experience at being a part of a Catholic family and coming out as queer? Do you have any ways to explain that to other people in which they can be more comfortable with themselves or be more comfortable around their family members and really just becoming them?
Yeah. I think the main thing is you have to come out to yourself first.
Mm-hmm.
And I know for me, a big part of that was also coming out to God, like those were very connected. And not really coming out to God, maybe, but kind of like getting right with God, I guess would be
Yeah.
a good way to put it. And so, because once I did that, I was able to talk to people and I wasn't too worried about if they were going to, what their reaction was going to be, because I was kind of like, if they have a problem with it, that's their problem with God, not mine.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and so, but I needed that foundation in order to start having those conversations. And so that would be my main thing is to like, you need to come out to yourself first
Mm-hmm.
and get right with you. And if there's a higher power involved in, how you function in life, then like get right with that higher power. And then at that point, you can start opening yourself up to the people that you care about. Um, because there's gonna be haters, and I think a big piece of that is people who are not comfortable with themselves,
Yeah.
you know?
Is there any sort of aspect in your life that you think you'd want to change, or if you had the ability to go back and do something different, you would?
Mm. Ooh, good question. I like it. I'm definitely in an age where there's probably lots of things I would want to change. One of them that comes to mind is like I've always loved dancing, and that got lost somewhere along the way, and
Mm-hmm.
so I would, and then I, especially now in an age where it's like we'll watch TikTok and we like literally just watch people dancing, and I'm just like, man, dancing is so great.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's kind of a random one. Um, I don't know. It's so funny
Yeah.
because I think like we all learn what we're supposed to learn when we're ready to learn it, so there's definitely parts of me that's like I wish I had not taken so long to understand the power inside of me.
Mm-hmm.
And and at the same time I'm like I clearly wasn't ready to learn that
Yeah.
until now. And so it's hard. Yeah, I don't know. It's hard. It's like advice always comes from the point of view of a person who wants to. It's like me. If I gave you advice, it's from my
Mm-hmm.
point of view, and you don't have my point of view.
Yeah.
So it's like not necessarily all that helpful to you. Um, but I think just in general, like y'all, we're meant to shine. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and I think we all understand being in the presence of somebody who is like flowing into their potential and how powerful that is. That you're like, oh my god, I don't know what it is about that person, but I just want to like be the best I can be
Yeah.
because they're the best they can be,
Mm-hmm.
and how beautiful if all of us were able to do that. How
Yeah.
much more beautiful would our world be?
Mm-hmm. Hearing that, what would be like, what is the most rewarding part of just being you, being a musician and getting out there and meeting?
It's meeting people. I'm such a
Yeah.
people person. I don't know. I think I'm that person that um I will stay till the last person at the merch table. And it's not because I'm trying to sell merch. It's because I actually just want to get to know you. Like that's
Yeah.
the whole reason I do music is I'm much more of a person who does music to meet people than a person who does music just to make music.
Yeah.
You know, which makes the making music part actually really difficult for me because it's a process that's mostly alone,
Yeah.
and that's really hard for me. So, anyway, but I think that's the point. Like, this is actually the first time I will have gone on tour in 2 years,
Mm-hmm.
and this is the first show that I'll be doing. I mean, I've done a few shows here in Austin, but as
Yeah.
far as being like on the road in front of a new crowd,
Yes.
in a new place, this is my foray. So I would love, to be able to just connect with people. That's it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. The interaction is like a big part of everything. Like personally, as a person who's trying to get into film and documentary and just interviewing people, I also just love talking to you. I love meeting new people and having the ability to hear their stories like I'm hearing from you right now. And I just love to do that. I completely understand where you're coming from with that. And that's one reason why I think it's important to hear stories like yourself, someone who's not just a Latin American, but Latin and Swiss, someone who's also part of the LGBTQ community, someone who's a musician, experienced a lot of different things, and bringing that type of diversity to certain fields that a lot of people haven't been able to bring it to. And I think that's just really great what you're doing and the things that you've already done. So, is there anything else you'd like to add for viewers or even just for yourself, kind of some message to put out
Honestly, I'm just like I'm ready for a good time. So I
there?
hope everybody comes out. I'm really excited about yeah, just about being in a new place. I'm excited to see those faces in the audience. For me, I think performing on Zoom or doing live streams throughout the pandemic, it was cool in a different way. Also really hard. Um, it's like you're asking people to talk during your show because you're like, please write in the chat because I don't know if you're there. Like having to generate all of that energy myself was what was really hard, and it really made me appreciate the audience even more. Like I've
Yeah.
always been a person that appreciates audience interaction and feeds off of that, but man, during the pandemic, I was like, wow,
Yeah.
I had no idea how much energy an audience brings just literally by sitting there and smiling or clapping or whatever it is.
Mhm.
Um, and so I miss that. And so I hope we can, let's have a good time. It's gonna be great.
Yep. And one last question. So it's about your Latin Grammy nomination. So what really inspired your La Que Manda album and where do you see yourself going from here?
Yeah. Um, so La Que Manda, which it means the woman in charge or she boss, boss babe.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the album, like I said, is very much the story of a woman coming into her power. And I I didn't understand I was writing that album. It wasn't like I set out to write an album
Yeah.
like that. But I started looking at the songs that I had been writing, and I was like, wow, these very much tell a similar story from different angles. And I have a TED talk that's actually coming out later this year that kind of tells the story of La Que Manda, the song itself. So I
Mm-hmm.
might tease that, make y'all wait for that. But at the same time, just kind of understanding that I don't know, we're all powerful, and
Yeah.
I think there are and I wouldn't even just say women, like, I mean obviously everybody, we have this beautiful power within us, but we are in a world that likes to put us in boxes.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, they're just we don't fit well into boxes because we aren't meant to fit well into boxes.
Yeah.
And so I just hope that my music or any music that you're listening to is inspiring you to be your best self and to share that with the world because that's what we need.
Awesome. Thank you. Uh Hopefully we'll see you Friday when you're here in person in your concert. And it's really nice talking to you. Hope your flight goes well and everything. Just
Thanks
have
so
a good
much.
day. Yeah.
All right. Thanks so much, Moses. Cheers.
Yep.